now's the time for it to go out, because now's the AMA portion that folks like. And actually, so we asked for questions beforehand. We started doing that a few AMAs ago, and the number of questions between prior ones and this one, it grew a lot. There were 25 questions that came in. So we're gonna try and work our way through these, and then we're gonna try and have an open session to be able to ask more. But a lot came in, which is good, because we can kind of chat about it before, to see that we know what the answer would be, because it's always possible in an AMA you'll ask us something that we just didn't really think about. Okay, so I guess let's just start kind of walking through these. Best practices for a new person stepping into the role of FileWave admin. That is covered in a couple of ways. So there is a best practices session that's on YouTube that we also will be doing about every 6 months on Discord. I made that about every 6 months because the best practices don't really change, until about 6 months or more has come by. I may not have learned a new thing. I would say the YouTube recordings are great for somebody. The Foundry videos, as far as like that onboarding videos, that new admin, if they watch through those are meant to explain how things work, and the way that it explains them should hopefully lead you down the best practice path. We can also do direct training. Like I said, those packages that I said that we were going to offer, where we have different sizes of package, and we'll have explanations for why you would want the different sizes. For instance, a new admin that inherited FileWave and the previous person wasn't really doing anything with it, well, that could be pretty simple. That's just a matter of learning FileWave and the best practices in general. But maybe you came into an organization that heavily used FileWave, and there's a ton of file sets and a ton of associations. That requires, perhaps beyond the best practices, maybe some help from professional services in sorting out what the previous admin was doing. So we'll have those published shortly. In the next 30 days, we should have those all published. So I think that's the right answer for that. FileWave officially transitioning to Alma Linux. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Again, once FileWave 15 comes out, that is a requirement for us. Now in the next quarter, we can spend some more time getting there. Our drop dead deadline for having you have a way to do it is really by the end of the year, that every issue should be sorted out. Everything should be perfect, ideally in the next 3 months. But if by end of year, everything is 100% sorted out, then you would have about 6 months to be able to switch your server. And switching your server, the way it looks from the script that I've tested, is that it just in place turns that into an Alma Linux server, and everything's there. And it's really just a matter of having a good backup, because you should always have a good backup. And that's talked about in the best practices video. And then running the script, and then it's all done. So we hope for this to be not a headache at all for somebody. The optimal location for FileWave in terms of DEP and MDM on premises versus the DMZ. I think that Tony and I, who actually did client management together at a prior company, even 20 years ago, we had our management solution exposed to the internet. I feel like it needs to be, now it can sit in a DMZ with the port, exposed. If you're hosted, you're technically sitting out on the internet with your server. The server should be always kept up to date, which goes back to best practices, because there will be security vulnerabilities that come out. So if you run it yourself on premise, think about how you update FileWave, because there are a lot of people with on-prem where I'll speak with them and they'll say that they're still running 14.6 even today. Think about that. And if you can get to 14.10, because there are vulnerabilities and you do want to patch. If you're hosted, we patch you, pretty aggressively. You'll always be on the latest. I think that the exposure to the internet is good for a management product, because especially post-COVID. But when Tony and I did this, this was decades before anything with work from home. We just saw devices that were being sent home with people that couldn't be managed because they weren't connecting to VPN or VPN was broken. But now there's really no border to your network. Clients move in and out. Schools, teachers will take them home. Students will take them home. Snow days here in Pennsylvania, they've they've eliminated snow days by saying it's a school from home day using a computer. That computer should be managed, and so having a management system the client can reach is important. So same thing for corporations, right? You have lots of work from home folks. So I would say exposed to the internet is the best. Unless Tony or Derek, if you had an opinion otherwise.
Sorry, I was distracted by chat.
Take my silence as a no.
Yeah. So, okay, and Paul brings up a good point. Internet facing is good, so you can wipe devices remotely. I mean, just think about if you have devices that do not come on, and you don't have an always-on VPN, or even if you do, that VPN could become disconnected because the network that they're on doesn't allow VPNs, so it's not able to connect. Well, now you're kind of disconnected from it. You'd hope that the ports that FileWave uses would be open for the client to reach. I mean, that can be a consideration, but your best position is exposing it to the internet. There was a set of questions that came in around managing OS system updates in timely manner with MDM, system updates such as Ventura, blocking them from going to the new version, forcing the refresh of updates requested in the update manager, and the whole plan for a mainstream packaging service. So we'll lump that all together. So system updates with MDM. So we know that there is an issue with the Apple framework for MDM updates. And there are KB articles that are in our KB that talk about those issues. One of the ways around it is nudge, for instance. I mean, nothing's perfect. No workaround is perfect. But if you look in our KB, you'll see that there's an article published about nudge in particular. And so I would probably take a look at that now, while Apple seems to have some things, I guess, that we're working out with Apple. We do have contact with Apple around this issue. We're trying to work it out and see if there's things we could do in products that would improve it. But nudge would be one possible solution. As far as suppressing updates such as Ventura, there is a KB article that is meant to kill the Ventura, or any, if you're on, or in the past Ventura or Big Sur or Monterey, there is a KB article of a thing that will kill that updater if it goes to run. So there's that, but there's also the delay updates that's built into the MDM. Now, if you want to delay past sort of 90 days, I suppose, then the KB article that kills the installer would be probably the best way I could say. And then, obviously Ventura, you want to block it because you're not yet ready, because you don't have some software that works with it. And then later on, you'd want to back out, I suppose, that that blocker for the updater so that you could get to Ventura. And we do also have articles about being able to do upgrades and erase installs. So you should see that in the KB. Okay. Refreshing updates requested in the update manager. So I think we're talking about the assistant for finding updates. If we're talking about, I think we're talking about Windows in particular, but if you were the person that asked this, if you're in the chat, you could just sort of rephrase this, say if you're asking about Windows or Mac, but I'm assuming it's Windows. On the Windows side, there is a process that runs on the FileWave server every 24 hours that will refresh the offline catalog. as well, because we use the offline catalog, we've become aware that Microsoft is sometimes poor at publishing that catalog on day one. So Patch Tuesday will come. The offline catalog is not yet published. Your server probably hasn't run its daily update either yet. It usually, I see it appear on Thursday or Friday. So Microsoft will publish it on Thursday or Friday of that week. And then when your server runs that software update command on its side, then you should start to see, for instance, the May updates would appear.
Josh, in the chat there, Tom says that he was asking about Mac updates.
Oh, good. That's easier.
So, for example, my MacBook is running Ventura, but if I look it up in the update manager, the most recent update request is for Big Sur. It probably depends a little bit about some of the transition here. We'll say has not gone smoothly from the older school method of doing software updates, where you could use our update command line tool to do so, and we kind of leveraged that within FileWave. Moved, I can't remember which version it was. Was it Monterey? Or they moved
Catalina?
to MDM?
Yeah,
well,
I forget.
One of them, they moved to MDM commands only to do the updates. And so we have another interface for that in that software update assistant. And that's where you'll want to look for those. But we've found that there have been a number of issues. Speaking bluntly, we need to fix something on our side to make it so that you can't see the major updates, because you can't go from, say, Monterey to Ventura directly through that kind of update, but we'll show that to you. But the answers that come back from that are coming from MDM.
Yeah. Okay, so then I guess I know I see some goings on in the chat on these topics as well. And so then the mainstream packaging service, I guess that goes into sort of the long-term plan, not about OS updates, but about, well, I guess there is a bit. There's the bit where you want to make software update process a little more streamlined, improvements around messaging and such. But then there's also the potential future integration of things like Winget, right? More directly in the product. Right, Tony?
Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat.
That's what I thought. I realized as I said it, your eyes were looking at your keyboard. But the mainstream packaging service, that goes more into the future of potentially Winget or Auto Package being more integrated into FileWave, right?
Yeah, we definitely want to see that be a little bit easier. But the software update piece is just as important to us. It was kind of a flip of a coin, which one we worked on first. We went with third party because we feel there's more of an entry barricade, if you will, to getting to that, because you have to do a little bit of scripting. So we wanted to make that a little bit easier. But the software update stuff is just as important to us, and it's a critical in the application, of course, because you want to make sure that you're secured, that they're updated, that you know what's missing or not. So we have a whole bunch of things that we're looking at software update side. Accuracy is one of them, because as I said, the transition's just not been as smooth as we would have liked on our part or on Apple's part. Both, I'm sure we would both say the same thing there.
No. Okay, so then.
In fact, I will just share anecdotally that just yesterday, Josh and I were working on something for a demo later today, and I'm like, why in the world won't this device run these MDM commands? It's just sitting there. What the heck's going on? And we had to run the Kickstart thing because the local MDM client was dying. So these things impact us too, but hopefully that'll get resolved at some point here.
Yeah, and that was actually a rapid response update that my machine had. So that was those new ones. And Bjorn asks about Alma Linux 9.2 with a fresh install supported. So Bjorn, I don't have an answer on that. 9.1 was just what I had used the migration script from CentOS to Alma Linux on a few months ago. So I guess I'd say I'd expect that 9.2 would work, but I can't say for sure yet. So
Well,
you
and we
may
haven't
want,
released a version of FileWave yet that is supported
right.
on it.
So the timing of that, when 15 releases, I should be able to get installers that would be Alma Linux compatible. And then I'm going to kind of run through everything that we have from the beta process. So it won't take long, but we should have more information in the coming couple of months. Okay. There is also, what is FileWave's recommendation for managing unattended operating system upgrades? So I guess I don't know if that was Mac OS or Windows, I'm assuming, because iPads, for instance, are straightforward. So in the case of Windows and Mac OS, I believe we have articles posted on both. Although the Windows one might talk about getting to Windows 10, I don't know that the wording talks about getting to Windows 11, but the idea should be the same, and we should probably look at refreshing that. So I guess check that out. For somebody asking these questions, if I don't give you an end-to-end answer here, only because there's so many questions, if you join Discord, we can follow up more, or if you were to shoot an email, we could talk about more. Or I guess probably the easiest thing, because some of these might start to go into like support ticket kind of questions, you could open a support ticket because everyone knows how to open those. And if it turns out that support sees it as like a pro services thing, they kick it over to me. And that's not to say that it's a paid pro services thing, just it might be a question that I'd have to answer. Or they might ask me what the answer is. So maybe open a support ticket if we don't get to the complete answer on your question. So what is the best practice when replacing older iPads with new ones, ensuring the same apps and profiles and etc. are on the new devices? And that one is probably deeper than we could get to on this. I'm trying to think about if we have articles that cover it now. It would be a great Discord chat, again, to then make a video about. We know, for instance, there are schools in particular where they will collect all the iPads and hand them out fresh again in the new year, and they want to change the name and the assigned person for all of them. And that could seem like a complicated thing directly in FileWave, but there is a KB article about bulk updating the enrollment user and setting the device name for iPads. And it uses our API to do it, because you can do those changes in the web admin, but there's a simple little script that you can use with a spreadsheet, and you can basically rename all your devices. There's things like that custom iOS wallpaper that would let you have the serial number of the device show up on the lock screen. So when you have a stack of iPads to hand out, maybe the serial number in large text is helpful. Or because you can use custom fields in that, you could show who the assigned user is or the iPad's device name. So making it really easy to pick it up and hand it out. So there is that. And okay. And for anyone asking for articles, between Emma and John and Sean and everybody, there should be links in there. But again, if you don't get the answer, if it's missed in something, then just ping us after. Okay, so yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff around this, because probably the naming, the assignment of the iPads, and wiping them out, and then the whole thing of using the device enrollment program, Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, so that the device comes in, and having a depth profile that's configured to only show the questions you want to show. There's a lot to it, so it could be like a whole session just on that. Hopefully we have enough supporting articles.
It's kind of an it depends thing, right? There's not really a clear and easy answer on this one. It kind of depends on what you want to do. But I will say that's exactly the kind of thing that that folks work through in that assist program, right? Is to go through and try to figure that out. And it's also a great thing to do in Discord, right? If you want a free option, because the thing that we love seeing about Discord, and frankly, the thing that never with Alliance in the
Oh, you broke up again, or you're breaking up.
That we're seeing a lot more between customers where folks are talking to each other in any way.
Oh, I think bits of it came through as it was catching up, that the Discord's seen more traction than the Alliance Forum, as far as helping people, customer to customer, yes. Which I think is really the best, because like you guys, when you come to professional services or even support, right, you're going to support because something's broken, and support knows they've experienced a lot of things broken because people always come to them. People come to professional services asking how to do things. We know how to do them mostly because we've worked with other people to do them, and we do some research, constantly on the best ways to do things. But I'm only as good as I am because I'm exposed to so many different situations at different customers. For any of you, you can then get exposed to more customers in Discord and the Alliance forums, and in a more real-time, chat way. And hopefully if you go to conferences, and maybe you meet each other in person and, form even better, relationships to be able to discuss things. And I should mention quickly, next week, Sean Holden and I will be at MacAD UK in the UK. So we will be there, and Sean will be a speaker at MacAduck if anyone is in the UK or will be going there for that conference. And in July, Jonathan Kane will be a speaker at Mac Admins here in Pennsylvania, and I'll be going there as well because I can drive over there, and I will be helping John with that. And we should be doing HEC in November as well, where Pro Services is there and some of the sales folks, and again, doing a talk there. So we hope to meet you guys. Okay, so to get through these before we hit the end, which is getting near, will there be other SSO integrations other than Azure, Okta, and Google? So the way we've done SSO, it is with those specific things. It wasn't more of a generic SAML kind of integration. And I'd say there's not one on the roadmap or a more generic SAML necessarily in the short-term roadmap. But this is where the product board, the link was shared earlier in the chat. If you go to the knowledge base and you look for product management, you'll see the article with product board. Submit it there, because it's either that we should think about a generic SAML thing that could work with many things, which we might figure out if 10 different customers give us 10 different things to integrate with, or maybe there's just one more that's common that we've missed. So submit it there in product board so that we can get a better picture of what's needed.
And I can give a little bit of a picture on the uptake that we've had on these. So roughly we have in the ballpark about 100 customers or so that are using an IDP currently. And of those, it's about 2 to 1 of Azure being the predominant. So it's about 2 Azure for every Google or Okta IDP. It's the rough breakout. So what we'd be looking for would be, what's the thing that we need to add that's going to also satisfy a lot of folks, right? What's the next Azure, or what we need to do on that front? So it really is about how many folks need it.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, there was this question about Azure AD. And I wasn't quite sure, and if you happen to be on right now and you ask this Azure AD question, maybe specify, because you can tie it in for SSO, for instance, as the previous point explains, but I wasn't sure what you meant by it. So if you ask in the chat and I see the reply, I'll answer it, or if somebody gets to reply in the chat, that'd be great. Is there a plan to incorporate the management of virtual reality devices? I was super, and Tony also was very about this as well. If this was things like the Meta Quest, or if this was the Apple device that nobody knows if it exists yet, but we think at WWDC they might announce it, or if it was some other vendor's device, and also what the use case was. And if you happen to be in here, in the chat, if you'd say, and product board again would be really great if people have different vendors of different VR devices or augmented reality devices, if you have a reason that you want to manage them, that would be super for us to understand. Yeah, I could think of, if there is an Apple product, which everyone seems to believe there is, if they incorporate the MDM framework, then maybe it just fits in like Apple TVs do, for instance, and maybe there's location tracking. But if it is about the Apple device, since it doesn't exist until WWDC potentially, it's hard to say on that one. But I see Jeffrey says MetaQuest for him. So we didn't have any VR or augmented reality stuff in the roadmap, but if you go through Product Board or Tony's email, I shared it earlier, maybe share like what you'd like to accomplish. And then we can balance it all out. Okay. Let's see. When will we be able to customize the dashboard settings in FileWave Central versus FileWave, really? So the dashboard is different in Central versus anywhere. And then Tony, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to this because it's more.
Well, I kind of enjoy having you just cover everything and then not really say anything at all. But no, the dashboarding feature is a great tool. We in the chat earlier, we don't make nearly enough use of it. We're going to be making a lot more use of it, but we didn't archive the dashboard in Central because it will be useful for alert to make sure that 100% of everything was all. Before we eventually get rid of that, we won't be in dashboard that's in Central. We may incorporate the Grafana dashboard, so we won't be updating what's in Central, but Grafana's are actively updating and working on. We're especially working right now on some additional ways to look at system health, especially for the very, very large environments where things are very IP syncs and Google syncs and IDP syncs and etc. Where we're looking at more of how the systems are in Grafana, but then we really want to expose some more for reporting and alert as well. So that's the place that we'll invest time and energy. At some point, killing out the dashboard as it is currently in Central, but incorporating the an iframe or something of the Grafana dashboard.
Yeah. And I'd say, on our YouTube channel, we do have that getting started with Grafana, which is meant to show you, how to make your own dashboards, but you might want to watch it just to see, what Grafana is if you haven't taken a look. That's published. And there will be another getting started with Grafana coming up on Discord. So the next question is easy, which I like. File set deployments, excluding Macs from file set deployments. So particularly, right, deployments can be edited in FileWave 15 in Central, and deployments can handle excluding a device or a group of devices. So you will have what you need in the next, if you're on-prem, whenever you upgrade your server after 15 releases, which should be in a couple of weeks. And if you're hosted, again, in a couple of weeks when you get upgraded by operations. So you should have that ability. And actually, let me just make sure, when can we add exceptions group? I'm making updates in that. Yes, I believe that I covered everything in that. So the last page of questions is intermittent issues with renaming an iOS Apple TV client. So I looked at this and I understand why it happens. So when you rename something and it's an MDM enrolled device in the Apple world, there is a command that goes to Apple, that goes to the device, that tells it to rename itself. And inventory then tells us that all occurred. So when we're seeing that a device name is not changing, there's either a problem on Apple's side, or conceivably there's a bug, right, on our side, that when you go to do that command, we're not sending something right. This one, I would say, for anybody that's experiencing this, reach out to support and kind of dig into this with support, because we should identify if there's something we could be doing better. You know, even if it was an Apple caused thing, maybe there's something we could do, like making the timeout longer for trying to do the rename. But that would be probably your best bet on this one, because it's more of a break fix kind of question.
Yeah, Josh, let me chime in with something there too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I didn't mention that we're working on in this next release, I didn't have it in the list, but one of the things that's kind of somewhat internal, but somewhat very useful in a production environment too, is you know how you can look at a device and look at the MDM history, the command history on an individual
Yeah.
device, right? That data is not exposed to inventory, which means that you can't look at that for your whole environment, where you could be able to look at status overall. So we're looking to expose that data in an inventory query, so you can actually do some reporting on that. So you might be able to do a report that says, look for all the, I think that one comes through as a settings command. Look for all the settings commands that are in a not sent state, or in a sent state but not acknowledged, those types of things.
Oh yeah, because for instance, in researching the client's not, where the system channel's in a stuck state maybe, or something like that, then it was hard to make an easy report to show where things are at. And yeah, so that would be good. Okay, so the viewing what's installed on the computer without looking through a query. There's an option in FileWave Anywhere. There is a tab for it. And I believe, Tony, when we talked yesterday, that there isn't a specific version that will get that in Central, but it would probably be a good idea for that to happen for consistency. Right? Unless your Starlink cut out, I think. We'll take that as yes. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll take that as yes. But so if you go into Anywhere and you look at a device, you will see it there. I think Tony's back. So let's see. Can we get actual model names? Oh, Tony and I chatted about this yesterday as well. So the pretty name, a lot of organizations, a lot of systems or reporting, they'll, the sort of the standard name where it's like I4,1, for instance, and they'll pass it through a translation table. For anyone that uses Incident IQ as a ticket system, they have that like model reference where you can say, all these models equal this, and then you can kind of name it the way you want. That kind of thing we do not have in product, but it seems like, again, something good to ask through product board, because from a technical standpoint, it's not very technically difficult in theory to have a translation table, but that does not exist right now. So you see the 4,1. Let's see. How can I create a report showing counts of each model of each device? Now, if you want to see counts in FileWave Central, whenever you make a query, so that's like a report down at the bottom. If you have it as a favorited query, with the little checkbox next to it, so it appears on the left pane, it does show the count for how many are in there. I mean, that's one easy way. So if you have certain things that you like to always know the number of, then those queries, just make them a favorite. And in FileWave Central, you'll see the number on the left-hand side. That would jump out to me as probably the easiest way. And then also when you're looking at a query, I believe in the top right corner, it shows you the number of devices that are in that query, even just looking at it. My memory is that it shows that.
If I could chime in on that one, Josh, hopefully I'm coming through a little better now. I just want to mention to be a little bit careful with the favoriting of queries, because I do see in a lot of environments where people do that with all of them. And that is a little bit of a challenge, because those queries are running all the time then when you do that to get those numbers. One thing that I think is really good to do is anything where you're looking to do aggregate reporting like that, that's where Grafana is perfect. for aggregate reporting. So if you create a report for the thing, you can then use Grafana to actually show you like a pie chart that's a breakout of all of those devices. So I think Grafana is a great way to go for that particular one as well.
Yeah. And actually, in Emma's getting started with Grafana, we talk about reporting and how to show things from queries. And you're right. So you could have something in Grafana that's a little widget that shows counts of certain things that you always want to monitor. So one kind of interesting thing that a company that we work with is doing, or company, a large school district, they re-image a lot of devices. I think 40,000 devices get re-imaged each summer. And they have these little progress gauges for each one of the schools. And so they can track on the screen how it's going with imaging across the whole environment. It'll go from 0 to 100%, I believe, for the progress bar. So they do that by using a field that indicates that it has the 2023 summer image. So from inventory, they're counting that versus the devices that don't have that field set to the 2023 image. So it can be super easy. And I know we're running up against the end of this. So I included a message in the chat about the link for Discord and the forums, because that'd be a great way to continue once we wrap up. But I'll get through this page at least. How can we prevent teachers from turning on Find My Mac? So Find My Mac creates a problem that I believe you can overcome in the DEP profile for your devices. The DEP profile, on the last tab, you will see a thing about whether you're going to allow, and I always forget the name of it when I try and do it from memory, but you're going to either escrow the recovery information to Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, or allow them to be able to escrow it themselves, or disable. And if you disable, then they won't be able to lock, active lock. That's it. I always forget. But they won't be able to do that activation lock, which I believe should then prevent them preventing you from wiping the device. So I believe that's the answer. And will FileWave continue to maintain, and also there is a restriction profile, I believe, as well. So will FileWave continue to maintain the IVS in the future? And I think probably that question came from the fact that imaging wasn't really in FileWave Central. So it might appear that we didn't care about it, but you'll see in FileWave 15 that associating images is in FileWave Central. It was just a matter of it wasn't accomplished yet.
Anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere. But yes, we're continuing.
Anywhere, not Central. Yes, because it's of course always been in Central. So in FileWave Anywhere, it is there, and it is supported. Obviously for Windows imaging, because Mac OS imaging hasn't been done for quite a few years. So Windows imaging with the IVS has a future. Okay, and that is, I know, to be the last slide of questions. And we did run up, we actually ran past the time. So I know we covered a lot of stuff. I would love to keep chatting. I feel like we probably have to wrap this up. But I do want to continue chatting on Discord or the Alliance forums, wherever you would like to. And these three barcodes can help you get there. If you scan it with your phone or whatever, you can get the URL. And I pasted them in the chat a few times. So I'll leave this on screen if somebody needs.
This is like the weekend when you have to move the party from the bar to somebody's house, right? So yes. This is a good time to move the party over to Discord from here. But hey, on behalf of myself, Josh, Derek, everybody that is here from the FileWave team, we're so thankful that you were able to join us. We look forward to doing these events every time. They tend to be a little stressful right up till the minute they start, but we love doing them. We love getting a chance to talk to you all. We really appreciate your feedback, and thank.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So I'll leave this up on screen and I'll just mute myself, but Well, I'll leave this on screen in case anybody needs it for a minute or two until till Nina ends our session today.
Thanks, everybody.